All right. Hello and good afternoon. I'm Vanessa.
I'm Kate.
This is Mary.
And I'm Annie.
And we are here to introduce you to our friend, Ida B. Wells Barnett. We decided that the easiest way for us to help you to get to know Ida is through the way that we get to know all of our friends, by creeping on their social media. We encourage you to get out your phones or your laptops to look up Ida's Facebook page. The URL is www.facebook.com/ida.bwells.1253. Feel free to add her as a friend. So before we get started, a small caveat on dates. Due to Facebook not allowing people over 100 years old to have a Facebook page, we've had to alter our dates by a century. So when it says 1965, just know that we meant 1865, etc. Ida B. Wells Barnett is known for her bold journalism, her keen leadership skills, and her activism. While we believe that Ida would not have considered herself a social worker because she was most known for her activism, we do believe that she upheld the social work values of social justice, service, and recognized the dignity of the individual. Now, going back in time, way back to the year 1862. Ida was born a slave in Holly Spring, Mississippi in 1862. Just a mere 6 months later, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This would be a pivotal moment in Ida's life, as she would later write about how emancipation wasn't enough for the Black community to be free. At the age of 15, Ida's mother, father, and younger brother died of yellow fever. She then took it upon herself to get a job as a teacher at a Black elementary school in order to keep her siblings together.
In 1883, after caring for her siblings for a couple years, Ida made the decision to move to Memphis, Tennessee, where she continued to teach in an all-Black children's school. In 1884, while in Memphis, Ida showed her first act of resistance against racial injustices that African Americans faced. While on a train, Ida was asked to give her seat up. Ida refused and did not back down. She was forcefully removed while an audience applauded her resistance. Ida used her strengths as a writer to talk about the aspects of her case, which eventually sparked her career as a journalist advocating for the equality of all African Americans. In 1889, Ida founded Memphis Free Speech and Headline, an anti-segregation newspaper. She continued to write articles discussing racial injustices against African Americans despite threats against her life. In 1892, Friends of Ida's ran a grocery store, which was in competition with the white grocery store in town. An altercation took place and 3 white men were killed. Her friends were arrested and a lynch mob stormed the jail and killed them. This would begin her career as an anti-lynching crusader. Angered by this, Ida began her investigation on lynchings all around the South. From her research and investigation, she published Southern Horrors, Lynch Law in All Its Phases in 1893. During this year, she also went to World's Fair in Chicago to distribute her Reasons Why pamphlet. While at the fair, she received news that her printing press in Memphis had been destroyed by an angry mob of white men. Ida continued to travel through England, sharing her research and publications on lynchings in the South in 1894. This would also be the year that she settled in Chicago and started her job at the Chicago Conservator. The Chicago Conservator was founded by Ferdinand Barnett and was the first African-American newspaper. Ida became full owner of the newspaper and editor in 1895.
In 1895, she wrote the Red Record, which consisted of all the investigations she had done about the lynchings and was a place for her to compile her research. Later, in 1895, Wells married Ferdinand Barnett as she continued her journey as an activist. The couple later had 4 children together. Fun fact, their wedding announcement was on the front page of the New York Times. After moving to Chicago, Wells began to focus on community organizing as she realized that Black women and Black communities were excluded from organizations and activities. In an attempt for inclusion, she founded and participated in many organizations to drive social change. In 1896, Wells helped found and became a member of the National Association of Colored Women, the NACW. Due to the exclusion of Black women in society, this club focused on advocating for women's rights and improving their overall quality of life. Aside from their focus on women's rights, the NACW also aimed to lift the status of all Black people in society. After the Black community was horrifically attacked in the race riot of 1908, Wells attended a conference that later turned into the formation of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. In 1909, Wells co-founded this organization, now known as the NAACP, and the focus turned to using the courts to overturn the Jim Crow statutes. Although she was a founding member, she found that the organization was too willing to compromise with white folks and was not militant enough. She later left the organization, which caused rifts in her community. In 1910, Wells founded the Negro Fellowship League, known as the NFL. During this time, many Black folks had moved from the south of the United States to Chicago, leading to an influx of Black men who were living on the streets. Because Black people were excluded from organizations like the YMCA, Wells founded the NFL to serve as a gathering place that also offered a range of social services. Some of these services included food, rooms, employment help, and a library.
Women's suffrage became an important issue to Wells because of how it directly impacted a woman's dignity and her self-worth. When she founded the Alpha Suffrage Club in 1913, she realized that many Black women didn't have the confidence or the proper education to take part in politics. So she partnered with other clubs for Black women in order to teach them about the electoral process and engage them in politics. Then, in 1913, Wells and 60 other Black women from the Alpha Suffrage Club arrived to the women's suffrage procession in Washington, D.C. They were told to march behind the white Southern delegates, but she refused to back down and argued that she wasn't taking the stand for her own recognition, but that she was fighting for her entire race. Wells and her grassroots efforts were really instrumental in reaching the goals of the women's suffrage movement. Even after securing the vote, she continued advancement by registering women voters and offering support to women who were hesitant about their role in democracy. Wells continued to be an activist and a crusader for women in the Black community up until her death in 1931.
Not until 1970, when her daughter published Ida's autobiography, was her work more broadly recognized. Ida is known for her bold opinions and strong writing. She is a woman who stood by her convictions. This caused issues within her community, including incongruent information as to whether she was a founding member of the NAACP. We believe that Ida inspires current social workers to be bold in their convictions and to support journalism that shines the truth on society. The rest of her Facebook page has items that we believe Ida would be currently involved with and or supporting. For example, there is the Georgetown University Society of Professional Journalists and the Ida B. Wells Society. They are presenting a tools and skills for today's journalists. There was also the Journalist of Color Investigative Reporting Fellowship, as well as here's just a photo of the historical site of where she and her husband lived. It's on Instagram. You can check it out. As well as there are different cartoons that people have kind of dedicated to her. This is kind of a cool graphic of Nevertheless They Persisted, and Ida B. Wells right down here is included amongst other people such as Gloria Steinem, Harriet Tubman, etc. So she is currently now being more recognized as a leader, and especially as a Black woman. This is just a graphic of Stop Erasing Black Women's Work. For us, this highlighted that while Ida B. Wells wasn't known very well while she was alive as being an activist to the broader community, now she is far more recognized. And includes things like, for example, in 1990, she got to be a stamp. Another piece that's actually pretty close to us here at the University of Washington is that there is an alternative high school for 40 students, and it's called the Ida B. Wells High School. So, little known fact there. We wanted to finish up our presentation with some creativeness on part of a Instagram artist named Samus Music, who made this short video about Ida B. Wells, and we hope that you enjoy it.